No.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening, and welcome to Youngstown State University's Alumni Lecture Series. Tonight's program, Resiliency and Child Welfare, will highlight a program within Youngstown State University's Social Work Department called the University Partnership Program, sometimes known as UPP. Before we get started, though, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about myself. My name is Phyllis Johnson, and I'm the coordinator of the University Partnership Program. What a great opportunity for me after retiring from Trumbull County Children Services after 34 years the opportunity to work at the university setting, recruiting and mentoring social work students who had a child welfare interest and wanted to specialize in child welfare. What a dream for me to be able to teach and train students who wanted to do what I did all my life, 34 years. So at this point, towards the end of the program, I will be providing some information about the program. But before I get into that, I would like to tell you a little bit about our keynote speaker. Her name is Jessica Williams. Jessica is a former student of mine, and she will be our keynote speaker tonight, and she plans to tell a true life story of how her experiences in her childhood brought her to a career in child welfare. To give you some background about Jessica, Jessica is a two-term graduate of Youngstown State University, holding both a bachelor and a master's degree in social work. She is presently employed at Trumbull County Children Services, where she serves as a supervisor in the intake assessment department. While Jessica has been with her current employer for only 5 short years, she has accomplished amazing things. She has managed to use her personal experience, compassion for child welfare, and education to quickly secure a position at the agency. In addition to supervising a team of caseworkers who are line workers who are out daily in the field, Jessica is a mentor and a field educator for the Youngstown State University's University Partnership Program, as she mentors and trains students who we send to her that would like to specialize in child welfare. It is with great enthusiasm and pride that I'd like to introduce to you now at this time, Jessica Williams.
Thank you, Phyllis.
You're welcome.
So for my presentation, I prepared a PowerPoint. It helps me to have a visual. And so I'm going to begin sharing my screen now. As part of my presentation, I thought that it would be helpful to give a little bit of background regarding my own personal experience in child welfare, as that really was the driving force that led me to pursue a career, specifically in social work, specializing in child welfare. As Phyllis already shared with you, I was a child that was exposed to substance use and neglect at a very young age. Both of my parents struggled with substance use for as long as I could remember. There was 4 of us. I have 2 younger sisters and an older brother. But in growing up, we were subjected to what we thought was normal, a lifestyle of parents struggling with addiction. And so my parents' drug of choice was crack cocaine. And so, as some of you may know, with substance use comes homelessness and neglect. And so because of those things, we were eventually removed from my parents' care and placed into foster care. Through that removal, we were separated from my brother. He was not initially placed with us. It was just myself and my younger sisters who were placed into foster care, and that eventually turned into adoption. Typically in child welfare, parents are given the opportunity to work towards reunification, and my parents did not meet the goals to secure reunification. Therefore, we were up for adoption. And so my 2 sisters and I, we were adopted in 2002. So within our adoptive home, we definitely had more structure. We were not subjected to we were not subjected to substance use. However, as some people may know, and assume is that in child welfare, and specifically when it relates to adoption, there is also abuse in adoptive homes. So my sisters and I were subjected to abuse in our adoptive home as well, and that ranged from physical to sexual abuse. And so therefore the adoption eventually disrupted. Throughout all of this, never did I think that I was resilient. Never did I think that what I was going through was something that was abnormal necessarily, because when you're a child going through those things, that's not how you think. You just think that you're trying to survive. You're fighting to survive. You're fighting to make it through to the next day. And despite all of those experiences, my goal was always to get back to my parents. And that's something that is typically hard for foster caregivers, other like outside people to understand, is that regardless of the things that children are put through, they still want to get back to their parents. They still love their parents. And it's something that people don't understand, but it's something that's also so very true. So following the disrupted adoption, my sisters and I were placed into a foster home. So we were back into care at this point. So that's trauma. However, being back in care was probably one of the best things that ever happened to us, because we were placed with a family who had our best interests at heart. We were placed with a family who wanted to see us survive, who wanted to see us thrive. And it quickly turned from a foster family to my family, or our family. And so throughout all of this, never once as a child did I blame my parents for any hardships or anything. I didn't blame them for a removal. I didn't even blame them for their drug use. I always blamed the social worker, because children see them as the enemy. You took me from my home. Everything was fine, or at least we were managing. You took me from my home. And so when I finished high school and was choosing a career, social work was absolutely my last choice, because I had such a hatred towards that profession, mostly because I did not understand how things or why things had transpired the way that they did. And so in adulthood, and meeting with Phyllis and taking classes at Youngstown State University within the social work program, I fell in love. I fell in love with the idea of becoming the worker that I wish that I had had as a child, recognizing that just because my experience in child welfare was a poor experience, it did not mean that had to be true for every child. And so when I chose the career, my goal always has been to share my story, to help other children who are going through those same situations understand that that does not have to be something that is permanent. That does not have to be something that defines you. You are not predestined to fail because you have been subjected to things that are out of your control. And so that is really the driving force behind my career in child welfare, is that I want other children, kids like me, to recognize and to understand that there's so much more and there's so much better than what they may have been subjected to. And so, again, like Phyllis had said, I completed my education at YSU within the UPP program. And because of that program, I was placed directly into a field placement at Trumbull County Children Services in 2015. Before I graduated, I was offered a position as a caseworker, and I happily accepted. I loved the work that that agency did and continues to do. I love what they stood for. Even through my internship, a lot of the things that I had initially thought about child welfare as a whole were completely erased, because I began to understand that the goal in child welfare is always to keep children safe. And one way to do that is by keeping families together. And like the large majority of people, I had always assumed that the goal was to break families apart. When people hear children's services, they immediately typically think that they take children away. And so being able to be a part of a system that is so much more than that negative stigma was something that I had looked for and happily found at Trumbull County Children Services. And so I began my employment there in 2015. I decided to take a year off from school because I felt like I needed a break, and I wanted to get familiar with my new role in the agency. So I took off a year, and then I decided I wanted to go back to school because as a caseworker, I felt like I was absolutely making a difference in families' lives and in children's lives. But my goal was always to be in a supervisory role because I felt like in a higher position I could affect change more. And so I began my master's program in 2016. And prior to graduating in 2019, I was offered the position of supervisor. And honestly, you're at my agency, you cannot be a supervisor without a master's degree. And so the fact that my agency recognized my passion and my dedication and my commitment to child welfare and to the agency and was willing to give me that opportunity was phenomenal. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for all of the opportunities that I have had because what I recognize is that kids like me, kids in care, kids who grow up exposed to substance use and things like that, they don't necessarily make it. And that's a stigma, but there are also numbers that support that a lot of times kids like me, we don't make it very far. And so again, that really just speaks to where my passion comes from in helping people understand that just because that has historically been the truth, it doesn't mean that it has to be true for everyone. So currently, I am a supervisor in the intake and assessment department, and my team of workers are really what are like the first responders to allegations of child abuse or neglect. And so what that means is when we're receiving those referrals, whether it is Johnny came to school with a black eye and he said mom's boyfriend did it, or something like a baby testing positive for illegal substances at time of birth. My people are going out right away, and they're the ones who are addressing those concerns. And that's a job that I also previously held before I was promoted to a supervisory position. In addition to being a supervisor in assessment services, like Phyllis had mentioned, I'm also a field educator for UPP students. That is another passion of mine. I love that interaction with students. I love being able to teach them and to help them find their passion, to get familiar with child welfare and watch them also fall in love with the field and with the profession and the work that we do, directly related to servicing families. So that's enough about me. Unless you guys have questions at the end, I will gladly share any information. In regards to child welfare, I thought that it would be helpful to share some statistics just because I want to put into perspective the need for child welfare agencies, and then I will highlight later some of the services that we offer. So I'm not going to read all of these. I'm just going to hit on a couple of them. So these are national statistics. So 4.3 million child maltreatment reports were received. And that was in 2016. Of those 4 million referrals, there was 91.7% of victims that were maltreated by one or both parents. And that could include abuse, so that could be physical, sexual, emotional, or it could be neglect. So that is not meeting their basic needs. In addition, 146,706 children received foster care services. So foster care, that means the children at some point or another during their involvement with a child welfare agency were placed into a foster care setting, having been removed from their own home. Another one I wanted to touch on is almost 5 children die every day from child abuse. That is something that no one likes to hear, but it is a fact of the matter. Despite our most diligent efforts, sometimes there are things that happen that we have not been able to prevent from happening. And then the last thing that I wanted to just highlight is that 80.3% of child fatalities involve at least one parent. And I just think that speaks volumes. In Ohio, because I just wanted to make it a little closer to home. So in 2017, Ohio had 182,576 total referrals for child abuse and neglect. Of those, 83,750 reports were referred for investigation. And so what that means is in the 88 counties in Ohio, there were 83,000 reports that were investigated concerning child abuse or neglect. And so that is the role that my current team plays. That is their job, is to investigate those allegations. In 2017, there were 24,987 victims of abuse or neglect in Ohio, a rate of 9.6 per 1,000 children. And it's a decrease from 2013. However, that number is still very substantial. In addition, in 2017, there were 73 child deaths resulting from abuse or neglect reported specifically in Ohio. I wanted to highlight adverse childhood experiences. This is something that is becoming new. It's on the rise. I don't know that it was necessarily something that has always been addressed, but ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences, these, and you can see on the PowerPoint, they're highlighted. So when we're talking about things that kids have been involved in or have witnessed, it's going to include that physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse to whichever degree, physical neglect, emotional neglect, domestic violence. So that's being subjected to domestic violence. It doesn't even mean that they have to be victims of violence. It could just be witnessing a parent, being abused by a partner, parental substance abuse, household mental illness, parental separation or divorce, suicide or death, crime or imprisoned family. And a lot of these adverse childhood experiences have been linked to risky behaviors, chronic health conditions, early death, mental health concerns, and substance use. And so when we at my agency and other child welfare agencies alike, when we are assessing and investigating those allegations of abuse or neglect, and we're looking at how these children have been exposed to, sorry, that's my dog, is directly affecting their behaviors, is directly affecting their development. It is directly affecting, what they do into adulthood, because we've had several cases and instances where there's been a child that grew up in care, whether it was in foster care or just repeated involvement with our agency or other agencies within Ohio. And then they grow up, have children, and kind of repeat that cycle. So it's really taking all of those experiences and looking at how they have affected that child, not only in early development, but throughout life. And so that's something that's very helpful to look at. Now, not all of these things has to have happened to the child for them to have risky behaviors. And at the same time, just because these things have happened does not mean that they are going to be subjected to these other like risky behaviors or mental health concerns. Doesn't mean they don't necessarily correlate for everyone, but it definitely increases the risk. Like I said before, a lot of people don't understand what the role of child welfare agencies are in their counties. And there are a lot of negative stigmas associated with child welfare agencies. And so I wanted to highlight the services that we do offer. These services are specific to my agency. However, I know that a lot of them are true for other counties as well. So I'm not going to read all of them to you, but I will just touch on a couple. So crisis intervention, and so that is protecting children and helping families during difficult times with immediate agency assistance or information and referral services. So that is when we're getting those calls, we're going out, we're addressing the abuse or neglect, we're making sure first and foremost that the children are safe, and then we're coming up with a plan to either keep them safe or to find safety for them. And that is a service that our agency offers and other agencies 24 hours a day. While our office hours are limited, there is always someone on call to answer and respond to those situations of abuse or neglect. In addition, we offer investigative services. And so investigative services are different from assessment services in that they investigate more serious cases of physical abuse or sexual abuse. So that is going to include broken bones, child fatalities. It would also include sexual abuse in regards to rapes. So those are the services that they would be looking at. We also offer independent living services, and I know that a lot of people are not aware because, again, everyone kind of thinks one way about children's services, but because we aim to strengthen and create permanency for children who may not be able to secure that within their own family system, we also offer independent living services. And those services are for children who are 14 and older, who do not maybe have a family setting or who are in foster care. And there are things that we're going to teach them that they would have learned if they were within a family setting. So it's budgeting, it's teaching them and helping them find housing so that when they age out of the system, they have somewhere to go. It's helping them find employment. At times it's helping them find and purchase cars. So that's another really, really great service that people are not aware that we offer. Obviously, we have foster care services. Licensed foster homes, our foster families go through very intense training. They are subjected to background checks. They are completely vetted because we want to make sure that when we're taking these children out of bad situations, we're putting them in situations that are better. We would never place children in situations intentionally where it was equal to or worse than what they were previously subjected to. And in addition to foster care services, we also do family to families. And what that is, it's linking and it's a literal sit down between the foster family and the biological family to meet each other so that the biological parents know who's raising their children. They can come up with their own system of communicating so that the parents are always kept in the loop and understand, if it's school picture day, here's a copy of that picture. If Johnny had a bad day at school, let me tell you about that. So it is bridging a gap and an unnecessary gap and creating like a relationship between birth and foster families. And then we also offer parenting education. I've actually previously taught those courses, and parenting education it's open to the community. However, we service our clients first because if our clients need those classes, we want to make sure we're giving them to them because a lot of times having that education is one of their case plan goals, and they have to do that in order to reunify with their children. So these are a lot of the services that we offer. I did not touch on all of them just for the sake of time, but I just wanted to highlight and to let the community know that children's services and child welfare in general is so much more than removing children from homes. It is about community building. It is about strengths-based assessments and linking families with services that they otherwise may not have access to or they may not otherwise have explored. And all of that is done with the best interest of the child in mind. So the way that people within the community could help is reporting any suspicion of abuse or neglect to your county's public child welfare agency. We rely so heavily on referrals from community members, whether it's teachers, doctors, nurses, counselors. We rely so heavily on them because they are our primary referral sources and they have access to these children. We cannot investigate things if we don't know that something is occurring in the home. We don't just go knocking on doors looking for stuff. When we are investigating, it is because someone has called in to report, hey, there's something going on at this house. I don't really know if it's something I need to even let you know that's happening, but I want to take that step to make sure these children are safe. And so at any time, if you feel that there is something suspicious, whether you know for a fact or not, it is always wise and always encouraged to contact your local children's service agency. Another way you can help is to stay informed with policy changes. There have been a lot of changes recently in regards to funding, And child welfare is something that is underfunded, and it always has been. I don't know that there's a solution to that, but we need the money because we funnel so much out into the community providing these services. Unlike other agencies, the services that we provide to our families are free. They're not billed to their insurance. And so for our clients, those services are free. And so being aware with policy changes, voting on the levies, because we rely heavily on levies to continue to fund our agency. Those are ways that you can help. Becoming a foster parent is another way that you can help. And it is something that is so very rewarding. My foster mom, I can speak from personal experience. Her name is Karen, and her husband's name is Lee. They absolutely had an impact on my life, and we still maintain a relationship to this day. They're part of my support system, and so fostering a child, while it's something that is a huge commitment and it is a big ask to bring strangers into your home and to raise them, it's a huge ask. However, you could potentially save a child's life. So if that's something that you're interested in, absolutely contact our agency to inquire, or your own county's agency. You can also be a mentor through Trumbull County Children Services. We have a mentoring program, and it's not as big of a commitment as fostering a child, in that you would not be bringing a child into your home, more so serving as a positive support to the child. What we have learned is that children who are coming into care oftentimes do not have positive, healthy connections. And so we developed this program to provide them the opportunity to have a more support system, a healthy support system, though, which directly contributes to their success. And another way that you can help is to consider a career in child welfare. A lot of times when I have new students coming in, even if they've not yet explored the University Partnership Program, maybe they're just doing shadowing for one of their classes, there's always hesitation because child welfare, it's hard. It is a very hard career. It is something that is mentally stressful. It is something that absolutely causes anxiety. But at the end of the day, it is worth everything that comes with it when you realize the lives that you impact and when you realize the lives that you can potentially save. So now I'm going to turn it over to Phyllis to talk a little bit about the University Partnership Program.
Yes. Wow, you did a wonderful job of explaining child welfare. You touched on just about everything. At this portion of the program, I was going to just focus on the university partnership and talk a little bit about the partnership. And for those students out there who may be in the social work program or are listening, our listeners, and have an interest in maybe going into child welfare, I wanted to provide a little bit of information to them as to how they can go about enrolling in the program. After my presentation, we will go back to Jessica, because I know that many of you out there, many viewers may have questions for her about her story that she told, as well as her work that she is doing in the child welfare setting. We are so fortunate at YSU because we are one of 8 universities throughout Ohio that offer a university partnership program to our social work students. This program is a partnership between Youngstown State University, the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services, and local child welfare agencies. The agencies that we partner with here in our area are Mahoning County Children's Services, Trumbull County Children's Services, and Summit County Children's Services, and Ashtabula County Children's Services. The goal of the program is to recruit, train, and mentor social work students who have an interest in working with children and families where there are issues of abuse and neglect. As you heard Jessica's presentation, I'm sure you could see clearly the complexity, and how difficult the work of child welfare is. So many times students come to me and they say, I say to them, why would you like to work in child welfare? And they say back to me, well, I want to work with children and families, which is a wonderful goal. But child welfare is so much more than that. It's, as Jessica said earlier, it's very complex, it's hard work, it's emotionally draining, but I will reiterate what she said. In all the years that I did it, I never regretted once that I went into child welfare. I always am proud of the profession that I chose, and there was never, hardly ever a day. There were days that were stressful because there are a lot of stressful situations that you see, but most days you were very rewarded by the things that you felt that you were impacting with families. So, I'd just like to talk just a little bit, as you're probably, as you're listening to our program, you're probably wondering what kind of a person would want to do child welfare. It's really hard, and it is. And as I talk with students and I try to help them sort out their feelings about what they want to do in their professional career, and when they come to me presenting child welfare as one of their options, I look for some traits in the students, which I clearly saw in Jessica years ago when she came to me as a young social work student in our social work department. I'm just going to give you some of the highlights of the things that I feel are like most important. The main thing is being non-judgmental. Our families have a lot of issues, and you need to be understanding and compassionate. We use that word compassionate a lot. It takes a special person with a lot of compassion to understand some of the complexities of the family problems that our families are going through. Secondly, you have to have a strong belief that families can change. If you don't believe that, the work of child welfare will be very frustrating for you. You have to be an excellent problem solver. The problems that their families bring to us, again, are complex, and many times they just don't know where to turn. They don't have all the resources and avenues that we have in life. So we have to be good problem solvers. And a word that I like to use, you may not have heard it before, but it's called stick-to-itiveness. Actually, it's an actual word. Some of my friends who know me know I like to make up words, but I did look up the word. In fact, this word was first coined in 1859. And I think it describes so clearly what a child welfare worker needs to possess. Strong determination and a resolve that people can change with support, encouragement, and self-determination. And a persistence of not giving up, because so many times our families feel like everybody gives up on them and we have to hang in there. It can be very frustrating when you have the best of plan in place and you think your family's with you and you go back later, a week or so later, and you find out they didn't follow through with the plan. You just dig in and work a little harder with them because it's hard for families to change. We all know that. It's hard for us to change. I'm not going to go because I think we want to get back to Jessica, and we do have a lot of questions maybe for her, and our viewers may be calling in. But I just want to show you a chart, and I'm not quite as sophisticated as my former student who did a PowerPoint presentation, but I do have a chart here that I'm going to hold up to those students who are, and I hope you can all see it. This is kind of like a chart of what you have to go through to get into the program. It starts with applying to me. And then it starts with completing 2 classes that are offered. They're electives, Child Welfare 1 and Child Welfare 2. Then if you do your field placement, you will do it in a child welfare setting. one of the agencies that I mentioned earlier. After your field placement and after you graduate from YSU, the goal is to be hired at a child welfare agency. I'm going to put my fancy chart down. But the goal is to be hired by one of the child welfare agencies, hopefully the one that you're doing your field placement at. Also, if you do get hired at that agency, I think the most, maybe one of the most exciting things about the program is the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services recognized a long time ago that there was a shortage of child caseworkers. So they developed the program, the University Partnership Program, and provided an incentive for students who wanted to go through the program. One of the incentives is to have a specialized program right at the university that gives them all the support and direction and mentoring that they need. But also, at the end of the rainbow, so to speak, there are incentive monies that are associated with being in the University Partnership Program. Seniors who complete the program successfully and are hired, they will receive $5,000 from the state. And this money can be used to pay for tuition, to relocate. As I said, there's 88 counties throughout the state of Ohio, and our students can receive a degree here at YSU, and they can apply for employment at any of those county agencies throughout the state of Ohio. So that just kind of gives you a little bit. There's so much more I could tell you, but I think at this point in time, I would like to open it up for questions from our viewers. I'm sure there's many of you out there that are listening to Jessica's story and also hearing what child welfare is all about, and you may have questions for us. Okay, we have a question for Jessica that came in. One of the questions is, how have your own experiences to relate, how have you used your own experiences to relate to families that you have serviced while maintaining your professional boundaries?
That's a really good question. So with child welfare, and really in every profession, you're taught that you want to use disclosure, but you have to be careful with how much information you disclose. And so in situations where maybe I feel like I need to connect more with a parent or connect more with a child, I have absolutely shared my own experiences. Most recently, we did a removal. There were some concerns of substance use in a home, and so we could not leave the children in that environment. There was no family that could be identified to take them, and so we had to bring them into our custody. And so obviously that is something that is very traumatic for children, being ripped from their home environment where they feel safe, even if it's not the safest, but it's familiar to them. So in situations like that, I readily share with children who could comprehend that I know what they're going through because I've been there. I've lived through that experience. So I know firsthand, what it feels like. Similar experiences, not the same feelings. However, it allows me to relate. It allows me to kind of console them, to offer some type of reassurance that the situation that they're currently facing is not something that is supposed to be permanent. Another situation, there was a young boy and there were some allegations of physical abuse, and the child had confided in a support and said that he had been beat up by dad. Now he was pretty young. I believe he was maybe 6 years old. And so he made these allegations. My worker had gone out, talked with him. He held true to the story that dad had roughed him up pretty bad. And then when she spoke with the family again, he completely flipped the script. It was completely different. Then it was, nope, my dad didn't do this, I fell. And that's not abnormal. It is not abnormal for children to report abuse and then later recant. I've done it myself as a child. Because there's that fear of retaliation, there's that fear of the possibility of removal. And so in that situation, I just told this little boy, you know, you are allowed to tell people if something is happening to you. By no means should you be treated that way, and you're allowed to share that with people. You're allowed to tell someone that you trust what's happening. And so in situations like that, I've found myself maybe a little more emotional. One, because it's sad. No child should ever be subjected to such treatment. But two, because I've also experienced and lived that. And so it hits a little bit closer to home. However, I always keep in mind that it is not my situation. I've lived my situation. I've made it through that. And now in my role, my job is to help other people. And so never do I push my emotions or my feelings off on clients. Because I recognize that's inappropriate. And I'm constantly self-reflecting. That is something that you learn in the child welfare field, is being aware of your own biases. You're constantly self-assessing, checking yourself and making sure that you are maintaining those professional boundaries while also disclosing things that may help your clients deal with situations a little bit better.
Okay, thank you. A second question that has come in, you may have touched already a little bit. It has to do with any thoughts that you might have about how your history, your personal history, may sometimes negatively impact your current role as a child welfare professional.
Okay, I don't feel that ever in my professional career that my personal experience has negatively impacted my work. And I do check-ins with my supervisor to make sure, you know, every once in a while I'm like, hey, am I reading too much into this? And you know, the response is always no, because I try my best, again, like I said, to remind myself it's not my fight. That is, I'm going to help them through that because that is my role as a child welfare worker. But I recognize that there's only so much that we can do. And so my goal always is to help, never to project.
Okay, the next question. The next question I have is something that I am interested in as the coordinator of the program, to hear what your response would be. And that would be, what advice would you give to students who are looking to pursue a career in child welfare, specifically through the UPP program?
Specifically through the UPP program, I would say the benefits are that in addition to your field placement and building connections with other students who are within that same program, you also almost always have higher employment rates. So when I completed the UPP program, there was 2 of us that were placed at the same agency, Trumbull County Children Services. Both of us were hired before we graduated. And since I've been at the agency, the other interns that have completed the program have also been hired on as agency staff. So as it directly relates to employment and field placement, I definitely think that is a huge benefit of the University Partnership Program.
If I could just add to that, I know through my work with administration at agencies and also through the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services, that agencies want UPP students. They know that they have had the training, they know they've been mentored, they know that they have firsthand knowledge, that in many instances there's still a lot to learn, but in many instances they're ready to step in and start working in the field of child welfare. And so if there's a choice between a student who's been through UPP and a student who has a degree in social work, the student who has the UPP background will probably get that. So, okay, well, I don't believe that we have any okay, I thought we had one more question from Facebook, but I guess we don't. Jessica, in closing, do you have anything that you would like to share or that you feel you've left unsaid that's very important for our listeners?
No, I just want to thank Heather for the opportunity to share a little bit of my story and to give us a platform to share about the University Partnership Program. Again, if you are interested in child welfare, by any means, just even any interest, reach out to Phyllis or even myself, and we would be glad to help you.
Okay, thank you. Well, at this point, then, I guess we will conclude. But before we do that, I would like to tell you, I would like to also thank everybody for this opportunity to not only have Jess, who I consider a remarkable young lady who has accomplished so much in her young life so far and has overcome so many obstacles and has such a positive, so proud to have somebody like her working in the child welfare setting, working with families. She's the kind of caseworker, if I was having problems, or maybe if any of you were having problems, you would want to see at your door. She has the compassion and she's caring and she has the passion for what she's doing. So I'd like to thank you, Jessica, for sharing your story. I would like to thank Heather Belgian, who's the Associate Director of the YSU Alumni Lecture Series, for giving us this opportunity to come on, not only for Jessica to tell her story, but for me to be able to promote my program. It's a good opportunity for students out in the viewing audience who may have an interest. I encourage you to contact me. My email is pjjohnson@ysu.edu, and I'd be more than glad to sit down with you and explore the field of child welfare with you and see if it's something that would be good for you. So with that being said, I would like to tell you that these series happen every month. And on August the 20th at 7 p.m., which is a Thursday night also, Camelia Williams, who is the Director of Diversity and Inclusion at Youngstown Business Incubator, will discuss empowering others through entrepreneurship. So thank you so much for watching, and good night.